doing that, I was face to face with it. It was holding me by my throat, and it felt like it was sucking something out of me.
I probably should have been more scared than I was when I witnessed the exorcism.
I turned and looked on my right side. When I did, there's a beam on the side of the tree, a large beam. It's looking at me and I'm looking at it.
After I hit the lock button and looked back up, I saw red eyes staring back at me.
That they're going to show multiple gods all over the earth, be able to speak in people's languages, and at that point, it kind of converge into this one entity, which will be revealed as extraterrestrial. You'll realize that aliens are the gods of old, and at that point, it'll wipe religion out of the context of humanity.
No, it couldn't have been a person, I know that. I know that people can't run through the woods like that.
So this thing comes into view, and I see it. It's 50 yards away from me. It's walking on two legs. It's huge. This is a big, hairy-looking being.
Welcome. I'm your host, and this is Uncomfortable. Welcome back to the show, my friends. I am your host, Eric Szilagyi. If you've had an uncomfortable experience and you'd like to have it featured on the show, please get a hold of me at contact.uncomfortable@gmail.com. The world wants to hear your story, so please get a hold of me and let's tell yours on a future episode of Uncomfortable. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, both at Uncomfortable Podcast 65, and please remember to leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you can. That's the main way that you, the listener, can help get this show out in front of more people, and with more people listening, that means more people coming forward with their stories. Also, for those of you looking for a change of pace, please head over to Uncomfortable Podcast on YouTube and hit the subscribe and notification bell. That way you will be made aware every time I upload a version of the podcast, like I will with tonight's guest. If you're interested in helping support the show, head over to patreon.com/uncomfortablepodcast770 and check out the 3 levels we have there. Or if a standalone contribution is more to your liking, you can do that as well through Red Circle's Sponsor This Podcast. The links for both will be in the show notes below. September 14th, ladies and gentlemen, 2024 is the date for Bigfoot and Brews and Spirits 2. Again, held at Sister Lakes Brewing Company in Dowagiac, Michigan. This year's lead speaker, Ohio's Amy Boo from episode 102. She is a part of the Olympic Project out in Washington, as well as leading her own project called Zoo Book. Also, I am pleased to announce that we have secured Mr. Scott Tompkins of the Bigfoot Mapping Project. He is featured in episodes 57 and most recently in episode 127. On the slate is naturalist John Hickenbottom from Ohio's Salt Fork State Park. John was featured in episode 37, where we dug into the fact that he is responsible for a video series on the Ohio State DNR website on the topic of Bigfoot. On the paranormal side, our special guest speaker will be listener favorite, the Archbishop Christina Rake. As we add to the event and flesh out the weekend's itinerary, I will make you aware there will be a VIP night the night before at the same venue. More information on that will be forthcoming. Stay tuned for more info. Official page and tickets will be available by the beginning of March. Tonight's guest, ladies and gentlemen, is brought to you because of the Archbishop Christina Rake. Tonight's guest is a gentleman who started his journey into the paranormal at a very young age. As the years passed, he studied under some of the finest in the field and began conducting investigations on his own back in 1989. More frequently, now joined by his wife and 2 daughters. They have formed a family ghost hunting group, produced a worldwide, highly acclaimed paranormal web series where they investigate some of the most haunted locations in America. He has authored a couple of books on his family's adventures in the paranormal. He has appeared on numerous television programs as a professional magician and is a featured researcher for the American Paranormal Magazine. So if you're ready, let's get into it. If you will, please give a warm, uncomfortable welcome to Mr. Bobby Gallo. Bobby, welcome to the show.
Hey, Eric, it's great to be here. Thank you so much. And give a big hug to Reverend Rake for me as well, because yes, she is quite a person, and I really do thank her for this opportunity.
Well, we talked prior to the recording starting, and we were both singing her praises. She's an amazing woman. We've had a amazing response to her 2 episodes. I think we even put out an extra short thing so that we could get people that were interested in donating to her Kenya project for the underprivileged kids out there. Just a terrific woman. But let's talk about you, my friend. I appreciate you taking the time and making this happen. I know you're a busy man. Let's get into the paranormal. I've got so many questions, and I know we're limited on time here. I've done some investigations. We were talking about that before we started recording. I've done some things. I've done very little investigating, but the times that I have found it remarkably easy to get good evidence. Now, I've been told by Christina and some others, JJ Rose, that is because I apparently am very open to and possibly welcoming of that kind of stuff. I'm interested to know from you, are you or any of your family members that engage in the investigations, do any of you consider yourselves to be sensitive to these things, or is it more just an interest in it that prompted you to get into this?
Myself, no. My family, yes. In fact, I don't believe any of my family knew that they had any kind of psychic talents or gifts for this until we started investigating. Because back when we did it, I have been doing it since 1989, and I've always taken a very scientific approach to it. When my kids wanted to actually go on paranormal investigations, and my wife consented to it because she thought it would be, really educational for the kids, and it would be a way to experience historical locations with historical context. And hey, if we ran into a ghost and we got some paranormal evidence, that would be great, because they were big fans at the time of the paranormal shows on TV. And back when we started doing it, those shows were brand new, and there was nobody on YouTube doing it, or very few people. In fact, I think you could count the number of people doing paranormal web series on YouTube on one hand, and that's not even an exaggeration. But when we started doing it, I realized very quickly that not only my wife, but my daughters absolutely had some psychic talents. My wife, I bought her a homemade set of dowsing rods. She picked them up and started using them to communicate with spirits like she was using them her entire life.
My kids just actually got me a pair for Christmas this year.
Right. So, my wife, and it was amazing because people would look at our videos and watch her hands, and she wouldn't move a muscle, yet those things would work on command. My youngest daughter, Courtney, she'd be able to see orbs with her own eyes, and my oldest daughter was an empath. She could literally feel the emotions that the spirits were feeling. And this all happened spontaneously. I guess it's not by accident. There must be some higher power at work here. But I'm dad. I'm the ringmaster. I'm the guy who puts it all together, and I'm the guy who has the experience with the equipment and paranormal investigation. But I truly believe that it was my family that was able to make it happen. And, they were always very respectful of the spirits. And I believe that's why we've gotten so much evidence over the years.
Are you jealous at all of you being kind of locked into only getting the mechanical type evidence from technology versus what they're able to perceive?
I wouldn't say that I'm jealous. There have been times when I have experienced paranormal activity on a psychic level. Sometimes when we were in, darker locations and we've had more negative experiences, I felt that oppression just as much as they did. And that was pretty much time to get out. And also one time when one of our family members was actually under a spiritual attack, and was hearing voices in their head. And I'm not gonna go into the detail on that because I don't even talk about it in my books. I could just tell you that it does happen. Um, and I challenged these entities to leave my family member and come into me, and they did. And I heard them, and I'll never forget that. I'll never forget all of those voices just all of a sudden popping into my head. It was a terrifying experience. So there's good, there's bad in this field. You really have to watch what you're doing. Be careful what you ask for. Be careful where you're investigating, how you're investigating. Take the proper precautions. But now we've been doing it well over a decade, over 70 investigations, and we have evidence that would keep the average layperson probably awake for a week or more.
Well, I shared with you the events that unfolded with Christina at my Bigfoot and Bruise event.
Right.
And anybody can go back and listen to the episode, My Short-Lived Passenger, to get the details on that if you don't already know. But you brought up your daughter seeing orbs with
Yes.
her bare eyes.
Yeah.
One of the first investigation that I did with my kids was at a very old graveyard around Barren Lake Cemetery. It was Barren Lake Cemetery around Barren Lake, in just outside of Niles, Michigan. And my daughter called me back into a portion of the small cemetery, very old gravestones in it. And she said, "Oh my God, Dad, it's really cold back here." And it was the middle of summer. It was nighttime. There wasn't like she stepped under a tree and got shaded from the sun to cool
Right.
off. But in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, okay, that's what they always say, and she's saying it. And
Right.
I pacified her by walking back there. And as soon as I walked between these two large trees, there was about a 6-foot monument that would kind of look like the Washington Monument. It was just a big pillar with a triangle at the top,
No, the
a pyramid. Yeah. And, I was like, holy shit, you're right, kid. It is considerably colder here. And just as I said that, and I had a camcorder in one hand that was rolling, and I had my digital camera in the other hand. And in front of both of us, and I caught it on film, was about 2.5 seconds of this thing that just came out of the top of that monument.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little bit smaller than a golf ball. It was almost white, but it had a bluish halo around the edge of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it just came into existence, and it did this little zippity doo, and then poof, it was gone. It wasn't like it took off and we could see it leave. It just poof, and it was gone. And my daughter at the time, I think she was like 10 or 11, maybe 12. And you hear her on the videotape going, "Holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. Did you see that?" And, that was, so when people talk about orbs, I have a very high bar for what people consider orbs. And, something coming out of nothing and being there, letting you see it, and then poof, it's gone.
Right.
That was incredible.
The thing about that experience that sells it for me is the temperature drop. Now, when we started, we were actually fortunate enough to be trained by Dr. Harry Stafford. He's since passed on, God rest his soul. But it was down in St. Augustine, Florida, and was a literal legend down there.
Yeah.
And he would always, the first thing he would say is, if you're going to investigate the paranormal, you have to learn how to use a temperature gun, because the one piece of evidence, anecdotal or otherwise, that has withstood the test of time for literally thousands of years when it comes to its relation to the paranormal, are cold spots or ambient temperature drops. So that's one thing that to this day we take very seriously on an investigation. We always check the temperature, because when there are unexplained temperature drops or locations inside of the cemetery, inside of a house, or anywhere else that are noticeably colder without explanation, like, uh, it's not an ice pond and then the air, it's like
Right.
everything should be relatively the same, but all of a sudden this one spot is 10 degrees colder than another spot, you know, that could be a recipe for paranormal activity. And why is that? Because theory has it that the spirits will actually drain the energy from the area, the heat, in order to manifest. In your case, what happened? It manifested into an orb.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others, now, of course, the hardcore skeptics are going to tell you it's all dust. Well, you can't see dust with your eyes.
Yeah. That
And
was not
right.
the case.
And usually, in my experience anyway, and according to my evidence, a lot of times a spirit, when it's manifesting onto the physical plane where you can see it, it will start as an orb before it has enough energy to manifest into a full body apparition, if that's going to happen. So I totally believe it. I believe that not every orb is a ghost, but I believe that some probably are, or the orb is a portal of sorts where they manifest onto this plane of existence.
Do you think it's possible that, like the type that I just described to you,
Mhm.
do you think that that is just like a remnant of the manifestation of energy, or do you think that that's actually
The honest answer is we don't know,
right?
but I can give you my belief. I think they are the actual spirits. That's what I think.
Okay.
But I just think it's the form they take when they don't have a lot of energy. I think it takes the least amount of energy to make that orb. Now, we have evidence where we've watched an orb manifest into a full body apparition. I think when they manifest into a form that looks like you and me, I think that takes a tremendous amount of energy, and I think that's why it's as rare as it is.
Yeah.
We have a couple of them, a couple photos of them, but we don't have a lot. I think we have three, but we have a lot of orbs, and the orbs are not just orbs for the sake of happening to capture them on camera. These are orbs that appeared exactly where we ask them to appear. And there's usually some telltale details on an orb that put it into the paranormal category as opposed to something that is just dust.
And what I mean, do you have like a solidified list of things that
Yeah.
a checklist of things that you go through?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If it has concentric rings, that is probably a paranormal orb, in my opinion, because there was a book by Dr. Klaus Heinemann, who's a NASA scientist. It's called the Orb Project, and he would pretty much show you what he believed was a classic paranormal orb. And even a lot of orb researchers that I know that actually specialize in this will all agree that the mandala, or the membrane around the orb and the concentric rings, is pretty much a telltale sign of a paranormal orb. Now, if the orb is very blurry and indistinct, a lot of times that can be dust.
Right.
Lens flare is also very easy to distinguish. That is not paranormal, but it does look like an orb. Some insects can look like orbs. And this only goes to show that there are a lot of anomalies, airborne particulates, dust, lens flare, pollen, dander, moisture, that could all cause a circular anomaly in a picture. So I always tell the skeptics, well, why can't we say that ghosts can do the same thing? And they're like, oh, no, ghosts can't. Because, of course, the skeptics are more materialism minded, and they want to look for a rational explanation for everything. But some
Right.
things defy the rational explanation. I call it strategic placement. When an orb is exactly where it's supposed to be at a particular time, what are the odds? My daughter, we did the orb experiment out of the book, The Orb Project, and my daughter was able to call an orb right above her head. We have the picture. And then on a recent investigation to Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, we were getting crazy activity in one of the cabins. And I said, would you pose for a picture? It said yes. They're one of the pieces of equipment. Took the picture, and there was an orb. And what are the odds when I didn't get orbs in any other pictures on that entire investigation. I only got it that one time exactly where I asked it to be. What are the odds of that being a speck of dust by chance? Probably 1 in a million, 1 in a billion, 1 in a trillion. I don't know.
Right. And I think it's important to point out that, using a flash on a camera
Mm-hmm.
is pretty much a no-no, because that is, if you're gonna get an orb, a false orb, using a flash on a regular camera is a surefire way to get it. If you want to fool your friends and they don't know very much, take a picture with a flash at night and you'll get orbs, but it's going to be dust or particulates of moisture in the air, whatever it be. And then also, when using night vision or anything that's producing infrared, bugs, anything that has any of that powdery dust on their wings that are part of protecting the wings, that is highly reflective off of infrared light. And that there are things that you have to be careful that when you think you're getting something, I'm glad you were able to cover that, because I have had photographs sent to me that have the concentric rings, and even some that it's probably pareidolia, but there almost appears to be a portion of a face within the orb.
Yeah. And pareidolia is, the problem with pareidolia is many times we use that as a reason to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
There could be otherwise genuine paranormal evidence, but everybody's always screaming pareidolia. How obvious is the face? How obvious is the anomaly? Was it taken in a relevant location? Was it taken with other evidence from equipment that backs up the possibility that it wasn't pareidolia? Because honestly, blanket debunks. I mean, if we're going to use a blanket debunk for everything, like dust is all orbs or dust or bugs, and all images are pareidolia, then we're never going to get any evidence, because we're not going to take a picture. It's not going to look like the Mona Lisa. And it's so obvious and so clear. And so, I mean, the only picture I've ever seen that looks that way is the lady in Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, that classic Victorian image sitting on the gravestone. And who even knows if that's actually paranormal? Who knows if that wasn't a person?
Right.
But most of my apparitions look like the brown lady of Raynham Hall, like coming down the steps, the original paranormal photograph.
Yeah. I've got a friend of mine from a paranormal group out in Texas, and she was in this small town gift shop that was quite old, and it was part of a town that had been there for hundreds of years.
Right.
And she took a picture, and there is, in that very same color that you're talking about, that grayish brown, there is a very heavy set woman, and it is so clearly different than everything else around it.
Right.
It is really very, I mean, it wasn't doing anything other than basically like crossing a doorway. But very, 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 very cool picture.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a ton of them. And like one of them that I got at Gettysburg, I throw it out in my book. Is this pareidolia or not? I don't know. But I can clearly see a Confederate soldier. Other people might say it's pareidolia, and I know that does exist. I mean, in my first book, I have a picture on my basement floor that was created by a rag soaked in oil that stained the concrete, and I swear it looks just like Abe Lincoln. And I tell the people in the book, I said, "Look, this is not a ghost, but check this out. Do you see what I see?" And everybody says, "Yeah, it looks like Abe."
Yeah. Reminds me of what was that years ago, that piece of toast that was going around that was burnt, that apparently had the image of Jesus Christ in it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know one investigator that I love her to death, but during her lectures, she'll show pictures of faces in the clouds, and I'm like, yeah, I cringe, and I'm like, I don't say anything, I got to be nice, but there's some things that are clearly pareidolia.
Well, and
I'll be the first to admit.
To your point, it's relative to the location where you got it, right? Just something
That's
up
really important.
Just something up in the air is
right. Right. Like when if I ask something to appear in this one location and there it is, to me, that's important. Just the other night, I was on another show and we showed a video where my daughter saw orbs dancing on the stairs of a haunted theater, and I have them on video. They set off a motion detector. And the third, we have her with the eyewitness account where she actually saw them. And I didn't say anything at the time when I was videotaping them. She just said, I don't know what that was, but I saw them on the stairs going up and down, and there they are on the video. So when I call those evidence strings, and the more evidence strings you have, the closer you come to some type of scientific proof. Now, we don't have scientific proof beyond a reasonable doubt at this point, because you have to have repeatable evidence, which we're probably never going to have in the paranormal field.
Right.
But we have enough circumstantial evidence and anecdotal evidence and physical evidence to come to the conclusion that some of these things were most likely paranormal.
It's very similar to the Bigfoot community. You know, you have thousands of people who are saying they see this thing. You're having thousands of people who are reporting having experiences with it. There's no body. There's no clear pictures. There's, but I mean, it's very, 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 very similar. Different topic, but very similar occurrences.
Well, I think, when it comes to Bigfoot, and that's cryptozoology, it's not really my wheelhouse, but I will tell you this. I always tell people, the skeptics will say, well, what haven't we found scat? Why haven't we found DNA? Why haven't we found a body? And my understanding is this: it's clearly a primate. Just looking at eyewitness accounts, the pictures, the drawings from eyewitness accounts, and of course the casts of the feet themselves look like a primate. Why do we assume that they are as dumb as, let's say, a gorilla or a monkey?
Exactly.
How about, we don't know. Maybe they have intelligence approaching our own. And if they do,
or surpass it.
Exactly. And if they do, why would we not assume that they are intelligent enough to know that they don't want us to know they exist, because we're going to hunt them down, most likely. They've seen what we do throughout history to other cultures that are alien to our own. And maybe they're intelligent enough that they have perfected a way to keep themselves from being seen, except in that rare circumstance.
It's funny because I had this conversation with Christina, and I've had it with some other people. The similarities between investigating a haunted location and what people experience with Bigfoot, because there are orbs seen by people who are in the woods having experiences with Bigfoot. There are tree knocks. People assume that it's a tree knock, right?
Right.
But what if it's not a Bigfoot with a big stick hitting a tree? What if it is something very similar to, and I would imagine you'd agree with me on this, you hear a knock on a wall or on a table or something in a haunted location. Maybe that's not just a ghost knocking and saying, hey, I'm here. Maybe that's a peripheral effect of them coming into our ability to perceive them. Maybe
absolutely.
That's a sound that is an effect of them coming into our perception.
It could be. It could be. I mean, again, that's what I think. I've suspect that orbs are spirits, but they could be portals. They could be opening a portal, and that's what we perceive as an orb. I mean, we don't know. We don't have any hardcore proof other than the fact that these things sometimes do act on command. And, the whole Bigfoot phenomenon, that may be the same thing. I don't think they're spiritual beings like the Native Americans thought. I do think it's a physical creature. I just think it's a highly intelligent physical creature that knows how to hide itself, and possibly even in cave systems, because I'll tell you what, I don't care where in the country you go, there's cave systems under the ground.
Absolutely.
And they could be living in these cave systems and they know how to hide them.
Yeah.
You know, just go. I mean, I live in Pennsylvania. I live on the eastern side of Pennsylvania, but if you start driving west, it's just thousands of square miles of nothing. And that's just in Pennsylvania. Go further west and you have more. And I just believe it would. And now you got in these national state parks, like up in New York State and up in the Northwest, where you can't develop and you can't really, do anything destructive. They could effectively find places to hide and never be found.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And a lot of people agree with the use of cave systems. In fact, one of my previous guests, he's going to be a speaker at Bigfoot and Brews this year. The Bigfoot Mapping Project. He produces maps of Bigfoot sightings, or he will take and do an overlay of known cave systems within the U.S. And when you overlay those with the pinpoints of people who have had experiences and reported seeing Bigfoot, those populate each other. They're very, very spot on. And so, it makes sense that they would be using that.
Right.
The other thing that's very interesting is if you overlay a map of all the reported UFO sightings from the 1930s in the U.S., those also populate the same areas as the Bigfoot and the cave systems.
Right, exactly.
It's kind of crazy.
It is.
I'm not drawing a correlation that
subject. It really is.
Yeah, I'm not drawing a correlation that Bigfoot are from UFOs, but maybe there's something geological about those areas that produce or attract that kind of attention. I don't know.
Well, I mean, just look at scientists. They go into the oceans and they catch a fish that they thought of has been extinct for 50,000 years. And they're like, oh, it's still alive. We thought this was extinct a long time ago. Yeah. Or they go into Madagascar and they find a new insect that they never discovered before. I mean, look, we've only explored what, 10% of the ocean floor. We've only, we've never been past the crust of the earth. We don't know a lot. Modern science is only what, 200 years old, really? That started with Isaac Newton. Yeah. We haven't
infants.
So much we don't know.
Yeah. Our science is an infant, really.
It is. And the one thing that we have the most evidence for throughout millennia are ghosts. There's more evidence for the existence of spirits than anything else. And the skeptic will say, well, what evidence? What evidence? I said, it's mostly anecdotal, but it's there. And if you look at even Neanderthals were burying their dead with implements and tools, which back then were so valuable because they were so rare.
Right.
But yet they would bury them with their dead because they thought the dead were going to use them in the afterlife. They instinctively knew, or they had the experience of spirits and knew that the consciousness survives the death of the body. And all your great metaphysical teachers, all of your great religions, all believe this. And some people say, well, the Buddhists don't believe it. The Buddhists believe in reincarnation. It's a spirit that's being transferred. So in essence, it's still paranormal. So to me, the evidence is undeniable. And yet it's the one thing that science modern science refuses to take seriously. It boggles my mind.
Everything's a demon. Every haunted house is a portal to hell.
Yeah. Sure. Okay.
Okay. So I've talked to some really very level-headed people who investigate haunted locations. And, 15 years, 18 years, 12 years, hardly ever run into anything that they would consider to be, hey, we better not be messing with this because this is not good. Now I'm not talking that the existence of demons, and
I'll talk about it.
let's get into that.
I believe there's two types of malevolent entities. One are demonic, but I think they're very rare. Even in your ancient scriptures, there is an allusion to the fact that there's a finite number of demons. I mean, they were angels that fell from heaven,
Right?
And there's a finite number. They can't be everywhere at once, and I doubt any of them are posing as Aunt Mabel, through the psychic medium. I find, because to what end, honestly?
Right.
Because your fundamentalists, and I've run into just so many of them, will say, "Oh, it's all demonic." I'm like, well, if a psychic medium is giving me a message from my departed parents that bolsters my faith and puts me at peace, how is that demonic? And don't you think these demons have something better to do? And that's what I would say. And not only that, demons actually don't want you to believe they exist because that gives you power over them. They would rather you be an atheist. They would rather you being an unbeliever. Those are the easiest people to manipulate. And once you believe that, Darwinism rules and anything goes. So I think that's really where demons come into play. I think the bigger problem in paranormal investigation are earthbound spirits. Spirits that have not moved on for one reason or another. They are people, and they could be very mischievous and sometimes downright nasty. And we've experienced several of those in our investigations over the years.
Have you?
So yeah, absolutely. Spiritual attachment. We've had entities tell us to get out of certain cemeteries. We've had some, one was actually tormenting my oldest daughter by telling her about her recent friend's suicide.
Oh my.
Yeah, real nasty stuff. And we've experienced all of that. We've also had some really great experiences with spirits, some really wonderful experiences. So the paranormal could take all kinds of twists and turns. But is everything a demon? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. 100% not. However, and Bishop Rake would probably agree with me on this, it all really started about 500 years ago when Martin Luther threw out the books of the Bible that contain references to praying for the dead and
Yes.
that intermediary state where the dead are before they either get to heaven or wherever. I
Right.
think many times that might be right here on earth. And when you take that away, you're left with two choices, heaven and hell. And I call it the cosmic vacuum cleaner theory. You're either sucked up or you're sucked down, and you have no choice in the matter. You're not allowed to stay here for any reason whatsoever. That's what the Protestants believe because they took out those books of the Bible. So with that came a problem. And the problem is that if there is no intermediary state, whether it's here on earth or a physical place, limbo or whatever, then everything that is here has to either be an angel or a demon. And they never say it's an angel. They'll all tell you it's demonic.
Right.
So I don't believe that. I'm also born and raised Catholic, and I find a lot of sense in it. And that's why when I read Bishop Rake's book, I've told her this, that I was literally in tears because I said, finally, somebody who gets it. Somebody who gets it. And if nobody has ever read her book, and since you have this on video, I'm going to hold it up because I have it right here.
Yep.
God
in
in
the
the paranormal.
Yep.
If you're going to be in the paranormal, folks, you really need to read this book. It's very, very important. I say I'm plugging this before I even plug my own books. That's how strongly I feel about it.
And for the listeners, don't be put off that she's the Archbishop of a Catholic church. because
No.
that book, even though it's written from the perspective of someone who is Catholic, the information in there is
universal.
Exactly. Perfect word for it. Universal.
Yep. There's a lot of books that I get this question all the time. What books would you recommend? And I have my top 10 list, and that is on my top 10 list, along with the book we just talked about it, called The Orb Project by Klaus Heinemann, PhD. Of course, I have my 2 books in there, but that's because I wrote them.
Of course.
And my first book is a paranormal primer, among other things. So I think it is good for people. It's not just the story of me and my family. It's also a paranormal primer. But yeah, and of course, anything by Fiona Broome. And if people don't know who Fiona Broome is a pioneer. And she wrote How to Hunt Ghosts in Haunted Cemeteries, which was my go-to book, still is for years. Love that book. So there are some really good books out there. And if anybody ever wants to know what they are, just shoot me a text or a message on Facebook. I'd be more than happy to share.
Is there a danger to somebody who has just watched these paranormal TV shows and got a wild hair up their butt and said, I want to go investigate a haunted location? Is there,
there's
short
always,
of summoning something?
Well, that's what they try to do. And there's always a risk. There's always a risk when you're in the paranormal. And it might not be a big risk, but there's always something there. I've seen people's lives crumble sometimes that are in the paranormal, and they blame everything except what could be a spiritual attachment.
Right.
And it's so common. And even health issues arise sometimes because of these things. I would say you need to read a good book first, take the precautions, and I'm talking spiritual precautions, because a lot of people say, well, you got to keep religion out of it. I don't know how you can. I don't know how you can. I'm sorry, but I just don't. I mean, this is all spiritual. So when I say take spiritual precautions, that doesn't mean you're going to go in there and you're going to be Mr. Wizard or Mr. Science minded and nothing can touch you because, I'm not sure these things even exist. You're the number one target when you believe that, because if you don't believe they exist and you don't have any kind of protection around you, you're just inviting them right in. That's why I always carry blessed medals of St. Benedict. Archbishop Brake would love that one because we talk about it. And I say prayers of protection. There are new age modalities, certain crystals that repel negative energies. So I'm not saying you have to be Catholic or even Christian, but you do have to take some kind of precaution because, look, folks, you can't see these things. You don't know what you're talking to. And they might say they're one thing and then turn out to be something completely different. So, yeah, there's always a risk. I don't believe in playing with Ouija boards. I think those are extremely dangerous because those are conduit forms of communication.
I agree with you.
You are moving that planchette, but the spirit is influencing you to move it. So you're a conduit. The spirit is working through you to move that planchette. And if you think that doesn't come with any kind of risks, you got another thing coming.
Yeah, I won't touch them. I've had people tell me, been using it for years, never had any problems. I won't touch it.
There's always a first time. For those people that have never had a problem, okay, that's great, but there's always a first time. And
okay, I've done my my video research. I've watched a number of different shows. I've developed, when I take pictures, I'm going to take 3 pictures in a row. So I have a control and if something happens, it's going to happen in the middle or the last picture. I've got a night vision camera and I've got a, $20 K2 meter off of Amazon.com that I can I can see if there's any energy around me. I might spend a little extra money and get myself a $100 spirit box, a Bluetooth speaker that I can connect to it so it's nice and loud like it is in these TV shows and annoys the piss out of everybody that's in the room with you going and I might have myself a decent recorder, a digital recorder, to try to capture some EVPs. I've talked to some people who have become unhealthily addicted to the EVP phenomenon. Like they wake up and want to go get EVPs. So I'm not quite sure what that's all about, why you would become so obsessed with that, but I've talked to more than one. And then I've bubbled up spiritually, and I've got my blessed metals, or I'm saying my prayers, or doing my own little thing to protect myself. What's the process of finding a place that is going to yield you some kind of evidence? It's been like we were talking before we started recording. I've been a few times, and each time I've been, it's been remarkably easy for me to capture something. And I've been told that it's because of me, and
it is,
but
it is for sure. Because I know skeptic-minded paranormal investigators, and they'll say, I've been doing this for 20 years and I've never caught anything. I said, it's your attitude. Yeah. I said, these spirits are not trained monkeys here to entertain you. They're people. And if you're open and you're respectful, you'll get evidence. If you're not, you won't. And they don't have to talk to you. And I mean, sometimes they want to, but a lot of times, they're doing you the favor. So I think if you're open to it, or maybe even if you have some, a modicum of psychic ability, that helps. But I believe that it's all the intent. And I think it's how respectful you are. So I also think that it's where you investigate. A lot of people, the one thing that, it bugs me, but it shouldn't, because it doesn't affect me at all, is that there are certain locations that people will just go to again and again and again, and all their friends go to the same location, the same haunted hotel, the same haunted theater, this, that, the same haunted battleship. We always went to places that were never investigated. We'd find the oldest, creepiest cemetery in the middle of nowhere, and that would always give us our best evidence. And it's because there's a lot of reasons for that, actually. But if a place hasn't been investigated out and all that energy hasn't been sucked out of it, you'd be amazed at how much evidence you can get and how willing these spirits are to finally talk to somebody. But if you go to these famous paranormal attractions du jour, I call them, sometimes you won't get anything because it's been investigated to death already.
It's old hat to them. If they haven't moved on and they're still there, they don't care.
Right.
There's another group coming through.
Yeah, exactly. There's a few exceptions, and that would probably be someplace like Gettysburg. And the only reason is because it's 50,000 people died there. Right. Tragically and horribly. So the energy, I don't know if it's ever going to get sucked out of the place, but there are other places where I'll give you a great example. The Real Conjuring House. Everybody, they pay a lot of money to go investigate that place. I went there and I experienced nothing. It was actually one of my least eventful investigations.
Really?
Yep.
Interesting.
There's constantly people there, constantly.
Yeah.
So it's like, and like if it's not a residual haunt and these are intelligent haunts, you could just imagine these spirits going, oh, here comes another group.
While we were on the topic of the TV shows, they are still a comfort show for me. I will still turn them on and watch them as I'm cooking lunch or whatever, just having it playing in the background. I've seen all of them enough times that I don't even really have to see the the screen anymore to even tell you what episode it's been. But there is a significant element of production that goes on in those shows, because they have to ensure that people are going to come back next week. They want to ensure that people are going to not change the channel during the commercial break. Ghost Hunters for me was about the first that we started watching as a family with the kids. And that's where they really got their lust for these kind of programs. And then Ghost Adventures came out, and they had a I think it was a 2-hour documentary, which I thought was really good. And I thought, well, that when the brick flew up across the room in front of them, I was like, holy crap, that looked kind of convincing. And maybe like the first couple of seasons of that show, I liked, and it is turned into this incredibly perverted version of what it started out as. And now it literally, and I mean, there's so many other people that are on the kick now, Portals to Hell. So what, as a magician, I was told that you were pretty privy to some of the things that are done in those shows, that they resonated with you as being part of a parlor trick, or what are we getting fooled by?
Well, as a magician, it's very easy to replicate paranormal phenomena. In fact, I have books on it. I right in back of me, I have a library of books. And in many of those books, there's what's called spirit magic, which is magic that a magician could do that makes you think a ghost is manifested in one form or another. And so I have a critical eye. I watch these shows with a critical eye of one who has been trained in this. And I write about it in my second book, Family Spirits 2, Purpose in the Paranormal, where my wife and I were watching one of the more popular and credible, as far as their viewership is concerned, one of the shows. I mean, it's a man and a woman, very empathetic. Everybody likes them. Everybody believes them. And I'm watching the show, and they had a REM pod set up. And if any of your viewers don't know what a REM pod is, it's basically a device that has an antenna, and it generates an electromagnetic field around the antenna. Anything that breaks that field, the alarm will go off. So they had it set up in a hallway, and the two stars are staring at it, and all of a sudden it goes off, and the two stars are staring in amazement. And I look at this, and I said, I didn't just see what I saw. So I rewind it and I watch it again. And sure enough, the REM pod was in a hallway, and there was a room opposite, off the camera angle, on the hallway, off the hallway. And you could see somebody's hand waving up and down, the shadow of the hand setting off the REM pod. And I'm like, I cannot believe the producers never caught this. When I showed my wife, she was devastated. She will never watch that show again. But I can catch these things. It's, and then there was another one, and it may have been on one of the shows you mentioned, I'm not going to say, where the star of the show is holding a Mel meter. And he's going through a haunted hotel saying, oh, look at all of this paranormal activity. Well, the Mel meter had a REM pod function on it. You can't hold it in your hand because it's detecting you. It's not detecting a ghost. You have to put it down and walk away.
Well, and maybe he didn't know. Maybe he didn't know.
Oh, sure. And I'm watching this and I'm like, but you know what? I thought about it. 95% of his audience is not going to know that.
Yeah.
He knows it, I would imagine. And the producers definitely have to know it. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But 95% of his viewers, they're just going to see this thing going off and say, well, I guess it's a ghost. So that to me, that's not even a trick. That's just to me a very cheap way,
Deceptive.
a deceptive way, thank you, of showing some activity on the show. But when I see that, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, honestly.
Two of the things that really struck me hard when I first saw it, and it's funny because you mentioned St. Augustine earlier in the show, and during Ghost Hunters, they did an investigation of the St. Augustine Lighthouse, and they were looking up through the spiraling staircase, and
Right.
something very dark looked over, and that I thought was well done. If it wasn't real, but I bought it until I saw another episode where they were investigating a prison, and it might have been Penhurst prison. I don't remember exactly, but there was a black cloaked figure that seemed to run down the catwalk, and got caught on camera.
Mhm.
And I've watched that several times, and I cannot believe that they haven't pulled that episode and replaced that scene with something a little more convincing, because literally I can swear that you see like the whites of tennis shoes at the bottom of that black cloak as it turns to run back down the hall.
Wow.
And it's like, boy, I don't think you guys got me on this one.
Well, there was an episode on one of these ghost hunting shows where they were using a K2 and they were going upstairs and the K2 is going off, and they're like, wow, look at this K2 going crazy. And then the camera pans to the side and you could see a lit exit sign right underneath the stairs. That's what was setting off the K2.
Right.
Those things give off actually a lot of EMF. But they didn't do a baseline reading. And for your listeners, what a baseline reading is you go over the whole area in the beginning of the investigation with an EMF detector to find out where there's faulty wiring or anything that could be setting it off that has a natural explanation.
Yeah.
Once you get all of that out of the way, you say, okay, there's nothing here. Now, when you get EMF where there shouldn't be EMF, now you have something.
Yeah.
So that clearly wasn't the case there.
That's again, going back to what we talked before the recording about the cottage that I had been to, that we got everybody out of the house. Everybody was out of the house. I went with a K2 meter. I went to every outlet. I found where the router, the internet router was. I went near the electrical box down in the basement. I everything. And
Right.
because I knew that once we all came in, I was going to have to, basically I drew a map of the house on a napkin and marked out, do not go in these areas because you're going to get false readings.
Right. Good for you.
And,
that's perfect. It's exactly what you should do.
I mean, the intent wasn't to just scare the shit out of my kids or
Right.
The guy who lived there.
Right.
It's like, we're here. Let's do this as legitimately as we can and see if we can come up with anything.
I agree. And that was the correct way to do it. That's the look, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm in this to find out the truth. I want to prove the existence of the afterlife. I'm not in this for sensationalism and likes and ratings. And
Right.
but unfortunately, that's what this industry is morphed into, especially on YouTube. It's people that are trying to become famous that don't have any other way to do it. I say this in Family Spirits too, and it's kind of brutal. It's brutal, but you know what? I just truly believe it. The paranormal has become the one area of entertainment that requires absolutely no talent whatsoever. You don't have to sing, you don't have to dance, you don't have to play an instrument, you don't have to tell a good joke, which is harder than it looks, and you don't even have to do a good magic trick. All you need to do is sit in the dark with a digital recorder or an EMF detector talking to somebody who probably isn't even there. And these people think that's going to make them famous. They saw these 3 random guys and these 2 plumbers become multimillionaires with all of the trappings and lifestyle that goes along with being famous, and all the convention appearances and all of that. And there's these people saying, you know what? I can do this too. If they can do it, I can do it. And that's
Hell
what,
yeah.
hell yeah, we're going to be on TV. And this is where we are. So what do? They go out, they get some equipment, they get it, they film themselves, they put it on YouTube, and they think they're going to be famous. This is where we are.
Who gets it right?
You know what? The people that get it right are the people that you probably never heard of. There are some really good parapsychology organizations that are doing serious research, like IONS, and those are the people getting it right. It's the people like Klaus Heinemann, when he wrote the Ore Project, that book, he did that with real scientific intention. There are people getting it right. Now, I was here trying to do it legitimately, a decade ago. I've seen it, the pendulum swing all the way towards the strictly entertainment end, which is where we are now. But I am starting to see it starting to swing back. And the reason I say that is because the networks are starting to cancel these paranormal shows. People have caught on and they stopped watching them because they know a lot of it is just sensationalism.
Yeah.
You're seeing a lot of these paranormal web series on YouTube. I mean, they're just going to keep them up there. They're not going anywhere, but they're not producing any new content because they realize they're not getting famous. The Travel Channel's not looking at their web series and saying, we want you to be the next Zach Biggins. They're not doing that. And these people are not, and they're competing with so many other people, and it's become so cutthroat that a lot of people are starting to drop out. And where's that? That leaves the people that are still in it to prove it, to find out the real answers. And so I do see it starting to swing back a little bit, and I think that's a good thing.
I know you got plenty of things you got to get to. It's a Friday night. I appreciate you, sir.
Well, can I just talk about my books for a second?
Absolutely. I was just going to tell you, plug everything you've got going.
Well, look, there's the only 2 main things really, and the first one is my first book, Family Spirits. I'll put it right here in the camera so people can see it. The Adventures and Evidence of Gallo Family Ghost Hunters. This is my pride and joy. Hit number 3 on Amazon in the adventure travel category. And if you look on Amazon and look at the reviews, there's some actual heavy hitter parapsychologists. One guy is a metaphysical researcher, said it's the best book on the paranormal he's ever read, bar none, number 1.
Good for you.
Yeah, a lot of people. You'll see that review on Amazon. It's the newest one, in fact, newest review. Then we have Family Spirits 2, Purpose of the Paranormal. This is where Archbishop Christina Rake appears in this book. And this book was basically written in response to what we were just talking about, the sensationalism and the paranormal. Plus, it's more of our investigations. And one last thing I just wrote is a book on how to be a magician. Almost 400 pages. And this was just published by Barnes & Noble with a 25-year-old picture of me on the cover.
That's a nice mustache you got there.
Yeah, it was, and it was brown. And but here's the thing, and I want people to know this, and this is very important to me. If you go and watch our web series, and where's our web series? You'll see it right next to my name. It's at ghosthunter.ws. That's our link tree, and you could watch our web series. Anything you see in that web series and anything you read in our books really happened. Nothing is sensationalized. Everything is absolutely real. We like to say real family, real life, real ghosts, because we mean it. And is everything that we captured a ghost? Probably not. But some of it is so compelling that it'll give you a lot of food for thought. So we like to put ourselves in that category of real researchers. Do we have some dramatic music at points in our show? Yes. we do, and we have some great titling and whatnot, but that's only because I think a little production value is important. So I don't just look like a dad taking home movies of his kids and putting it on YouTube.
Right.
So it's an enjoyable show. We pack a lot into each 20-minute episode, a little more, a little less on some, but everything is real. So if you go
And
to
where
Ghost
is-
Hunter, yeah, go ahead.
Where is that available at?
If you go to ghosthunter.ws, that's a link tree. So you
Okay.
go to that and our entire paranormal world is there. You'll see
Okay.
links to our web series, which is on Vimeo, Daily Motion, Odyssey, YouTube, Rumble. We have it on all the major platforms. And then you'll see links to where they can buy the books and links to our photo dump pages for our investigations. We have one on MeWe, our Facebook pages. It's all there. It's all at ghosthunter.ws.
And that's the link tree. You'll find all
That's
the
the link
links
tree.
there.
Yeah. Yeah, the link tree is the greatest invention anybody ever came up with. One URL
Brilliant.
and you put everything there.
Brilliant, isn't it? It really
It
is.
is wonderful. Everybody should do it. And it's free.
It is free for how long? Who knows? But
I would pay for it though.
Currently,
don't tell them I
it
said
is
that.
free.
Don't tell them I said that, but I would, because it's just to be able to give out one URL and have everything there that they could want is just wonderful. It really is.
Bobby Gallo, I'm thrilled that the Archbishop introduced us. It's been a pleasure
me
talking
too.
to you. Absolute pleasure talking to you. You are. I'm going to have to dive into all of your content. I very much like the way that you handle yourself, and
Thank you. Thank you.
There is nothing at all that strikes me as being pretentious or produced about you or the way you talk about what you do. The magician book, not that I want to be a magician, but that is only available through Barnes and Noble. Is that what you said?
That is correct. That is correct. That's a Barnes and Noble exclusive. That's actually, believe it or not, that's actually the printed version. I used to run the world's largest website for magicians called the International Conservatory of Magic. And that started back in the late 90s. And that was really when the internet was young, was magicschool.com. And we had students from all over the world that came and to learn magic on the internet, which was this brand new thing. But as YouTube took over, we started losing subscribers to the point where we ended up closing down the site. But in the interim, I had written, well, the entire site was about 2,000 pages of original magic content. So all of the stuff that I personally wrote, I didn't want that to go into the ether. I mean, it was countless hours of work, and often at the expense of spending time with my kids who were growing up. So I said, you know what? I said, I need to get all those lessons and print them into a book. And that's what this is. This is all the lessons from the International Conservatory of Magic printed into a book. And so that anybody who wants to be a magician, or even experienced magicians that want really good original content that works before a paying audience, this is the book for them. So
are there any magicians that you have seen or heard of or are aware of that may be in league with something other in order to do some of the things that they do?
You know, I'm going to say no, and I'm going to tell you why I'm going to say no. Because believe it or not, and this might strike you as strange, and it strikes a lot of people as strange, magicians are the biggest group of atheists you have ever met in your entire life.
Really? Why would you think that is?
No, they really are.
No, but I mean, why is that?
It started with, I'll tell you, I think it's a historical thing. It started with, believe it or not, with Harry Houdini and Neville Mascalini, who went on a crusade to debunk fraudulent spiritualists around the Victorian era.
Right.
And I think that magicians throughout the succeeding decades thought it was incumbent upon them to be the great debunkers. That's why James Randi, who was a devout atheist, called himself an honest liar, because he was honest about lying to people when he said he could do magic. Penn and Teller, atheists, very like totally out. They're out with it. I mean, they don't make any bones about it. And every time I'm in a magic meeting or I'm in a magic thread on social media, it bears it out. Most of them don't believe in anything. They like magic for the ability to fake it, but they don't believe that there's anything supernatural to it, which there isn't. Obviously, it's tricks, it's illusion.
Right.
But I came from a different angle. I'm a person of faith and I'm a magician. So I wanted to be able to use my talents as a magician to debunk, which they do as well, but with the ultimate goal of proving the rest of it, whereas they just want to debunk all of it. And so I'm going to say most likely not, even though Harry Houdini before his death left the door open for the possibility. Most of the magicians I know and the communities that I've seen, they want no part of it, no part of the paranormal.
Interesting, because there are some that sure do personify that they have a little bit of help in doing what they do.
They're really good at what they do. I mean, a lot of magicians are really good at what they do. They can make you believe, and that's the scary thing, and that's even with a lot of psychic mediums. I mean, cold reading is an art. I have books on it. I never did it, but I have the books on it that tell you how to cold read. And some of them are so good at it, you think that they're really communicating with spirits when they're not. But I do know that genuine ones exist because I've experienced them.
Yeah.
In fact, I had one experience that was so powerful that I write about in my book. This is one of the reasons that put me on the road to doing this, because there's no way she could have known. And she didn't even know what she was saying. It only meant something to me. So when I told her the significance of what she imparted, she was as blown away as I was. And that's Sylvia Rossi and Family Spirits too.
Christina floored me. Christina Rake floored me
She's very talented
with a reading that she did.
Yep.
And we were only on the phone. It was not a video. My jaw hit the floor when she said the things she said. And that was eye-opening.
And that's what I like about her. And she's a, she could tune into people. And she keeps her circle small.
Yes.
She does. And I'm honored to be in that circle because I just think she's amazing. And I don't think she gets the credit she deserves, even though she's not out to get the credit.
Right. And that's why I have no problem throwing her name around, because
and I do too.
More people need to know about her.
Again, I mean, I've said in the beginning of the show, I'll say it again now. When I read her book, it's things that I already believed, and she wrote it in a book. And coming from her with her theological background, I mean, she's a Yale. She went to Yale for theology. I mean,
yeah,
she knows her stuff.
Yes,
when
she does.
When she wrote in that book things that I've been saying, but I didn't have. It was all up to that point. It was only my personal belief. When I'm reading this book written by somebody with her credentials, I was like, it was so meaningful to me, because finally I said, somebody who gets it. Now I could give people this book and say, if you don't believe me, read what she wrote, which was basically the same thing. So that all ghosts are not demons. What we do is paranormal investigators. There's nothing wrong with what we're doing. And I know, for those religious minded people that might be watching, they're saying, well, you should just have faith. Well, Thomas needed proof, in the Bible.
Yeah.
I mean, I put myself in the same league as Thomas, St. Thomas. You know, he says, I'm not going to believe it unless I put the finger in his side. And Jesus goes, okay.
I cannot tell you how many times I've been told, you just got to have blind faith. I've got too many questions. And I don't think
there's nothing wrong with that.
I do not think that God is going to be upset with me because I ask questions and want to know.
That's right.
I may not find out until the end, but I really don't think there's any problem with asking questions and being interested and looking into it.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it either. And I think in a lot of regards, it's important because some people do you know how many people are falling away from faith, of any faith? I'm not talking about Catholicism, Protestant, whatever. People just stop believing because they are told they need to just have faith. And they says, well, I need proof. And if you can't give me proof, then I'm not going to believe in it at all. Yeah. You know, when us investigators, paranormal, when we give people the glimpse of that other side, and it's just a glimpse, but sometimes the glimpse is all it takes.
Yeah.
That could start them swinging back the other way. And I think that's really important because I think secularism and humanism, we're living in a world where I think it's dangerous because, you know, the bottom line is if there's no higher power, then Darwinism rules and anything goes. It's survival of the fittest. If you can get away with it, go for it.
The world seems to be going that way, doesn't it?
Very fast.
Yeah.
So I think what we do as paranormal investigators, I think it's a very valuable service to the public. I truly do. You know, I'm actually going for my PhD in parapsychology.
Congratulations.
And, the professor said it's one of the noblest pursuits because if we prove this, it's going to change the world. And I believe him.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bobby Gallo, ghosthunter.ws. That's where you're going to find his link tree with all the links to all of his videos, where you can buy his books, anything and everything about him and his family ghost hunting adventures. Sir, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully we can do this again.
I would love to do it again. Thank you so much for having me on. It was a privilege.
I appreciate it. Good night.
Good night.